The stars looked different now. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship and watched the cold light from distant suns. 3 years ago, those same stars had witnessed the burning of human colonies. 3 years ago, the Zephyrian Empire had shown the galaxy what happened to species that did not bow down to their rule. Jake remembered that day clearly. He had been a simple cargo pilot, been running supplies between Earth and the outer colonies. The emergency broadcasts came first, then the screams, then nothing but silence where Luna Colony used to be. The Zephyrians had laughed when Earth asked for peace talks. They called humans primitive animals who had somehow learned to fly between stars. The Empire said humans were too violent and too stupid to join the galactic community. They said humans needed to be taught their place, so they taught them. With plasma bombs that turned cities into glass. With ships that hunted down every human vessel they could find. With soldiers who killed children just to prove a point. The lesson was clear. Humans were nothing, and the Empire was everything. But humans learned a different lesson that day. They learned that mercy was weakness in a galaxy ruled by tyrants. They learned that being peaceful only worked when the other side cared about peace too. Most importantly, they learned that sometimes the only way to stop a bully was to hit back harder than anyone thought possible. Jake touched the scar on his left hand. He got it pulling survivors from the wreckage of Mars Station. The Zephyrian attack had come without warning, just like all the others. Families torn apart in seconds. Dreams burning in the vacuum of space. And through it all, the Empire's message. This is what happens when you do not obey. The bridge door opened behind him. Commander Lisa Bennett walked in, carrying a cup of coffee that smelled like home. She had lost her brother in the attack on the mining station at Titan. Her sister died when the Zephyrians destroyed the research base on Europa. Like everyone else on this ship, she had reasons to be here. How long until we reach the target? Jake asked. Lisa checked her display. 2 hours until we drop out of hyperspace. The Zephyrian base should be right where our spies said it would be. Jake nodded. The intelligence had cost them plenty. 3 good agents dead, and twice as many captured. But it was worth it to know where the Empire kept its forward operating base in the Kepler system. From there, they coordinated attacks on human shipping. From there, they launched raids against the few colonies that had managed to hide from the initial assault. Any word from the other teams? Jake asked. Roy is still working on the new weapons. He says the power output is beyond anything we have ever built before. Amy is monitoring Zephyrian communications. They still have no idea. We are coming. Jake smiled at that. The UE's Vengeance was humanity's first real warship, built in secret using technologies stolen from crashed Zephyrian vessels. It had taken 3 years of work by the best minds Earth could gather. 3 years of trial and error, of explosions, and failures of slowly learning how alien technology worked. The aliens built their ships to be efficient. Every system was perfectly balanced, every component designed to work exactly as intended. They never wasted power, or space, or materials. It was elegant engineering that showed centuries of refinement. Humans built things differently. When they did not know how something worked, they added more power until it did. When a system might fail, they built 3 backup systems. When the aliens said something was impossible, humans found a way to make it work anyway. The result was a ship that should not exist. The UE's Vengeance was larger than most Zephyrian cruisers, but moved faster than their fighters. Its weapons could punch through shields that had never been breached. Its armor could take hits that would destroy any other vessel in space. Not more importantly, it carried a crew that had nothing left to lose. Chief Engineer Roy Phillips appeared on the bridge, wiping grease from his hands. He was a big man with kind eyes and gentle hands, which made it easy to forget that he could build weapons capable of cracking planets. Before the war, he had designed transport ships that carried families to new homes among the stars. Now he built tools of revenge. "The main guns are ready," Roy said. "I have never seen power readings like this. When we fire these things, every sensor in the system is going to know we are here." "Good," Jake said. "I want them to know we are coming." Communications Officer Amy Carter looked up from her station. She was young, barely 25, but she had learned to speak 7 alien languages since the war began. Her job was to listen to enemy transmissions and make sure the galaxy heard humanity's response. "Captain, I am picking up routine chatter from the Zephyrian base. They are not expecting any trouble. Admiral Vexstar is in command of the station. He was one of the officers who planned the attack on Luna Colony." Jake felt something cold settle in his chest. He remembered Admiral Vexstar from the news broadcasts. The Zephyrian had stood before the cameras and explained why humans deserved to die. He had listed human crimes: being too aggressive, expanding too fast, refusing to accept their place as a servant species. He had spoken about the attacks like they were pest control, necessary but unpleasant. "How many ships are protecting the base?" Jake asked. 3 destroyers on patrol. Maybe a dozen smaller vessels. The main defense grid looks standard for a forward operating base. They are not expecting a real fight. That was the Empire's biggest mistake. They had grown too comfortable with their power. For 1,000 years, no one had challenged Zephyrian rule. Species that tried to resist were crushed so quickly that others learned not to even attempt it. The Empire had become lazy, confident that their reputation alone would keep enemies away. But humans had a reputation too now. They were known as the species that fought back, the species that refused to surrender even when they should, the species that would rather die standing than leave on their knees. Jake walked to the tactical display that showed their target. The Zephyrian base was a massive structure, built into an asteroid in the outer system. It housed thousands of soldiers and enough firepower to destroy a fleet. Under normal circumstances, attacking it would be suicide. But these were not normal circumstances. This was not a normal ship. And Jake was definitely not a normal captain. "Set course for the base," he ordered. "No more running, no more hiding. Today, we show them what happens when you push humans too far." The ship changed direction, moving toward its target like a bullet seeking its mark. Behind them, Earth waited for news. Ahead of them, the Empire's servants prepared for another routine day of oppression. Neither side knew that everything was about to change. The galaxy had lived under Zephyrian rule for so long that most species had forgotten what freedom looked like. They had accepted that some races were born to rule while others were born to serve. But humans had never learned to accept things like that. They had a bad habit of fighting when they should surrender, of standing when they should kneel, of hoping when they should despair. Admiral Vexstar was about to learn why that made them dangerous. The UES Vengeance moved through space like a predator, stalking its prey. Its crew prepared for battle with the calm efficiency of people who had already lost everything that mattered. They had nothing left to fear because the worst had already happened. Now it was time to make sure the Empire feared them in return. The alarm sounded on the Zephyrian patrol ship Dawn's Edge as it detected the approaching vessel. Commander Zixalan lazily turned his attention to the sensor display, expecting to see another lost cargo hauler that had wandered into restricted space. "What do we have?" he asked his sensor operator. "Unknown ship approaching from the outer system. Configuration does not match any known design in our database. Size suggests a medium cargo vessel." Zixalan yawned. It had been 3 months since anything interesting happened in this sector. The humans had been completely silent since their pathetic colonies were destroyed. Most of their remaining ships stayed hidden in the outer reaches of their home system, too scared to venture into Empire space. Probably smugglers, Zixalan said. Or maybe some human survivors trying to find a new place to hide. Either way, they picked the wrong system to wander into. He activated his communicator and called the other 2 destroyers in his patrol group. Dawn's Edge to Stormbringer and Void Hunter. We have a stray vessel approaching the base. Form up on me, and we will go collect it. The 3 Zephyrian destroyers changed course toward the unknown ship. Each destroyer was 300 meters long and carried enough firepower to level a city. Their shields could stop anything short of a direct hit from a battleship's main guns. Their crews were veterans who had fought in dozens of battles across the galaxy. Zixalan felt confident as he watched the target on his screen. The unknown ship was maintaining course, apparently unaware that it was flying toward 3 of the Empire's finest warships. It would surrender when it saw them coming, just like all the others did. Target is not responding to our hails, his communications officer reported. Of course not. They are probably too scared to talk. Prepare to fire warning shots across their bow. That usually gets their attention. But as the 3 destroyers closed to weapons range, something strange happened. The unknown ship suddenly accelerated. Not the gradual speed increase of normal engines, but an instant burst that sent it racing toward them at impossible velocity. Sir, that ship just accelerated past maximum safe speed for any known drive system, the sensor operator said, his voice rising with confusion. Zixalan frowned at his display. The readings had to be wrong. No cargo ship could move that fast. Even military vessels rarely pushed their engines to such dangerous levels. Check your sensors, he ordered. There must be some interference. Sensors are functioning normally, sir. The target is now moving at twice the speed of our fastest interceptors. Before Zixalan could respond, the unknown ship opened fire. The first blast caught everyone by surprise. A beam of pure energy lanced out from the approaching vessel and struck the Dawn's Edge directly on its forward shields. The impact sent shockwaves through the entire ship, throwing crew members to the deck and causing lights to flicker throughout the bridge. Shield strength down to 60%, the tactical officer reported, shock clear in his voice. Sir, that was just one shot. Zixalan stared at his readings in disbelief. No single weapon should be able to drain their shields that much. The Dawn's Edge carried military-grade defensive systems that had never failed in combat before. All ships return fire, he ordered. Target their engines and weapon systems. The 3 destroyers unleashed everything they had. Plasma cannons, particle beams, and guided missiles filled the space between them and their target. It was enough concentrated firepower to destroy a small moon. The unknown ship flew straight through the barrage without slowing down. Impossible, Zixalan whispered as he watched their weapons strike the enemy vessel. The shots that hit seemed to do nothing at all. The target's shields absorbed impacts that should have overloaded any known defensive system. Sir, the target is firing again, his tactical officer warned. This time, 3 beams struck the Dawn's Edge simultaneously. The ship's shields collapsed completely, and the hull began to buckle under the assault. Emergency alarms blared as sections of the destroyer started to lose atmosphere. Shields are down, the tactical officer shouted over the noise. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. We are losing power to main engines. Commander Zixalan watched in horror as his sister ship, the Stormbringer, took a direct hit from the enemy's weapons. The beam punched completely through the destroyer's armor and emerged from the other side in a shower of sparks and debris. The Stormbringer listed to one side and began to break apart. This cannot be happening, Zixalan said to himself. It is just one ship. But it was not just any ship, he realized as he got his first clear visual of their attacker. The vessel was unlike anything in the Empire's databases. Its hull was dark and angular, covered in armor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange markings along its sides glowed with an inner fire that hurt to look at directly. More importantly, it was massive. What his sensors had read as a medium cargo vessel was actually larger than all 3 destroyers combined. Its weapons systems alone were bigger than most ships he had seen in combat. "Sir, incoming transmission from the target," his communications officer reported. "Put it on screen," Zixalan ordered. The bridge's main display activated, showing the interior of the enemy ship's bridge. A human stood in the center of the image, wearing a uniform that Zixalan did not recognize. The human's eyes were cold and hard, like someone who had seen too much death and suffering. "I am Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth ship Vengeance," the human said in perfect Zephyrian. "You have 10 seconds to abandon your ships before I destroy them completely." Zixalan found his voice. "You are in violation of Imperial space. Surrender immediately, or face the consequences." The human smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I have already faced your consequences. Luna Colony, Mars Station, Europa Base. Remember those names, because I do." "Those were military targets," Zixalan said, though he knew it was not entirely true. The Empire was enforcing galactic law. "The Empire was murdering children," Morrison replied. "Now you get to see what justice looks like." The transmission ended, and immediately the human ship opened fire again. This time, the beams were different, brighter, more focused. They cut through the Dawn's edge like it was made of paper instead of military-grade armor. Zixalan felt his ship dying around him. Systems failed one by one as the human weapons tore through every defense they had. The artificial gravity fluctuated, making him feel sick. The air itself seemed to burn as electrical fires spread through the corridors. "Abandon ship," he ordered. "All hands to the escape pods." But as he reached for the emergency controls, another blast struck the bridge directly. The last thing Commander Zixalan saw was a wall of white-hot energy racing toward him. The Void Hunter, the last surviving destroyer, tried to flee. Its captain pushed the engines past their safety limits, desperate to escape the nightmare that had consumed his patrol group. But the human ship was faster, much faster. A single shot from the UES Vengeance caught the fleeing destroyer in its engine section. The ship exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen from the Zephyrian base 50 million kilometers away. On the bridge of the Vengeance, Captain Morrison watched the destruction with grim satisfaction. 3 Empire destroyers reduced to scrap metal in less than 10 minutes. It was a good start, but only a start. "Any survivors?" he asked. Amy Carter checked her sensors. "A few escaped pods from the first 2 ships. The third was completely destroyed." "Let them live," Morrison said. "I want them to tell their friends what happened here. I want the Empire to know that humans do not forgive and humans do not forget." Chief Engineer Roy Phillips appeared on the bridge, grinning like a child with a new toy. "How did the weapons perform, Captain?" "Better than I hoped," Morrison replied. "How much power do we have left?" "Plenty. We are running at 30% capacity. These new reactors are amazing. We could fight a dozen more battles without needing to recharge." Morrison nodded and turned his attention to the tactical display. The Zephyrian base was still 2 hours away, and by now they would have detected the destruction of the patrol ships. They would be preparing for battle, calling in reinforcements, setting every trap they could think of. It would not matter. The UE's Vengeance had been built for one purpose: to show the galaxy that humans were done being victims. Today, that mission began in earnest. "Set course for the base," Morrison ordered. "Maximum speed, no more delays." As his ship raced toward its target, Morrison thought about all the people who had died because the Empire thought humans were weak. Today, the Empire would learn how wrong they had been. Admiral Vextar stood in the command center of Kepler Base and watched the tactical display with growing concern. 3 red dots that represented his patrol ships had just vanished from the screen. In their place was a single unknown contact moving toward his station at dangerous speed. "Confirm the status of the patrol group," he ordered his operations officer. "No response from any of the 3 ships, sir. Last transmission was from Commander Zixlon, reporting contact with an unknown vessel. That was 18 minutes ago." Vextar felt something he had not experienced in decades: uncertainty. 3 destroyers did not simply disappear without explanation. Even if they had suffered mechanical failures, they would have sent distress signals. The fact that they went silent suggested something far worse. "What do we know about this approaching ship?" he asked. The sensor operator looked nervous as he read his display. "It is larger than our initial estimates suggested. Current readings show a vessel approximately 600 meters in length. Configuration is unknown. It is traveling at maximum military speed and maintaining course directly for our position." Vextar studied the data with the eye of someone who had commanded fleets for 40 years. Everything about this situation was wrong. Unknown ships did not appear in Empire space without warning. They certainly did not destroy patrol groups and then attack military installations. Could it be a new design from one of the subject species? He wondered aloud. "Unlikely, sir. No subject species has the technology or resources to build anything like this. Besides, none of them would dare attack an Imperial base." That was true. The Empire had ruled the galaxy for so long that most species had forgotten what rebellion looked like. The few that remembered had learned painful lessons about what happened to those who challenged Zephyrian authority. "Sir, incoming transmission from the approaching vessel," his communications officer announced. "Put it through," Vextar ordered. The main screen activated, showing the bridge of the unknown ship. Vextar felt his blood turn cold as he recognized the figure standing in the center of the image. It was a human. Not just any human, but one wearing what appeared to be a military uniform. "I am Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Vengeance," the human said in fluent Zephyrian. "Admiral Vextar, I believe we have met before." Vextar stared at the screen in disbelief. He remembered this human from the peace negotiations 3 years ago. Morrison had been some kind of civilian representative then, pleading for mercy that the Empire would never grant. Now he stood on the bridge of a warship that had somehow destroyed 3 Imperial destroyers. "That is impossible," Vextar said. "Humans do not have the technology to build ships like this." Morrison smiled coldly. "We are fast learners. You left plenty of wreckage for us to study after you attacked our colonies. Thank you for the education." The implications hit Vextar like a physical blow. The humans had reverse-engineered Zephyrian technology. Somehow, in just 3 years, they had gone from helpless victims to building warships that could challenge the Empire's finest vessels. "Even if that is true, you are just one ship," Vextar said, trying to project confidence he did not feel. "This base has defensive systems that can destroy entire fleets. You cannot hope to succeed?" "Maybe not," Morrison admitted. "But I can hurt you badly enough that every species in the galaxy will see it. They will see that the mighty Zephyrian Empire can bleed. They will see that tyrants are not as strong as they pretend to be." The transmission ended, leaving Vextar staring at a blank screen. Around him, his staff waited for orders, but for the first time in his career, he was not sure what those orders should be. "Sir, the target will be in weapons range in 40 minutes, his tactical officer reported. "Activate all defensive systems," Vextar ordered. "Bring the shield generators to full power. Launch all available fighters. Send distress signals to every Imperial ship in the sector." "How many ships can respond?" he asked. "The nearest battle group is 6 hours away. There are some smaller vessels closer, but nothing that could arrive in time to help with the initial attack." Vextar nodded grimly. Kepler Base would have to hold on its own until reinforcements arrived. The station was powerful enough to do it, he told himself. Its shields had never been breached. Its weapons could destroy any ship smaller than a battlecruiser. But as he watched the human vessel approach, doubts crept into his mind. If this ship could destroy 3 destroyers so easily, what else might it be capable of? "Sir, fighters are launching now," his flight coordinator reported. 2 full squadrons are moving to intercept. Vextar watched as 24 of his best pilots raced toward the approaching threat. Zephyrian fighters were fast and deadly, designed to swarm larger ships and overwhelm their defenses with coordinated attacks. The human ship did not even slow down as the fighters closed on it. Instead, it opened fire with weapons that Vextar had never seen before. Beams of energy lanced out from multiple points along its hull, and the fighters began to explode one by one. "Squadron Leader Beta 7 is down," the flight coordinator reported, his voice rising with panic. "Beta 9 and Beta 12 are not responding. Sir, we are losing them faster than they can engage." Within minutes, both squadrons were gone. 24 fighters and their pilots, destroyed by a single ship that barely seemed to notice their presence. "Impossible," Vextar whispered. "No ship can engage that many targets simultaneously." But the evidence was right there on his screens. The human vessel continued its approach, leaving nothing but debris in its wake. Its shields showed no sign of damage despite absorbing dozens of fighter attacks. "Target is now in range of our main defensive grid," the tactical officer announced. "Open fire with everything," Vextar ordered. "All plasma cannons, all particle beam arrays, everything we have." Kepler Base unleashed the fury of its defensive weapons. Energy beams thick as tree trunks reached out across space toward the approaching ship. The combined firepower was enough to crack the crust of a small planet. The human ship flew straight through the barrage without even attempting to evade. "Direct hits confirmed," the tactical officer reported. "But sir, their shields are still at full strength. Our weapons are not penetrating their defenses." Vextar felt his confidence crumble completely. The base's weapons were the most powerful in the sector. They had been designed to stop entire fleets from approaching the station. But they were having no effect on this single human vessel. "Sir, the target is returning fire," someone shouted. The first shot from the UE's Vengeance struck the base's primary shield generator. The massive structure, built to withstand anything short of a direct hit from a dreadnought, simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, the next it was a cloud of expanding plasma. "Shield strength down to 40%, the tactical officer reported in a shaking voice. The second shot took out the main communications array, cutting the base off from the rest of the Empire. The third destroyed an entire weapons platform, along with the 100 crew members who operated it. "All hands, brace for impact," Vextar ordered as he watched more shots incoming. The human ship was not just attacking the base. It was systematically destroying every defensive system, every weapon, every piece of equipment that made Kepler Base a threat. But it was doing so with surgical precision, avoiding the sections where most of the crew lived and worked. As if the humans wanted survivors to tell the story of what happened here. "Sir, emergency power only," his chief engineer reported. "Main reactor is offline. Life support is holding, but weapons and shields are gone." Vextar looked around his ruined command center and realized that the battle was over. In less than an hour, a single human ship had destroyed his entire defensive grid and left his base helpless. "Open a channel to the human ship," he ordered. Captain Morrison appeared on screen again, but this time he was not smiling. "Admiral Vextar, are you ready to discuss terms?" "What do you want?" Vextar asked. "I want you to remember this day," Morrison replied. "I want you to remember that humans do not forgive the murder of children. I want you to tell your empire that we are coming for all of you. You cannot win. Vextar said desperately. "Even if you destroy this base, the Empire will send 100 ships to hunt you down." "Let them come," Morrison said. "We will be waiting." The transmission ended, and moments later, the base's main reactor exploded. Not enough to destroy the station completely, but enough to ensure it would never threaten anyone again, as Admiral. Vextar evacuated his ruined command post. He realized that everything had changed. The humans were no longer victims. They had become something far more dangerous. They had become hunters, and now the Empire was their prey. Emperor Keth Volume stood in his private chambers on the Zephyrian homeworld and read the report for the third time. The words did not change, no matter how many times he looked at them. Kepler base destroyed. 3 patrol ships lost. 47 fighters eliminated, all by a single human vessel. "This must be some kind of mistake," he said to his aide, General Morton. "Humans building warships that can challenge our technology is like insects learning to fly faster than light." General Morton shifted uncomfortably. He had been the one to bring the initial reports to the Emperor, and he had hoped they would prove to be false. But more evidence kept arriving from across the sector. "The reports are confirmed by multiple sources, Your Majesty." Admiral Vextar himself sent the final transmission before his communications were cut off. The human ship was definitely real. Kethval walked to the window that looked out over his capital city. For 800 years, his family had ruled the galaxy from this palace. No enemy had ever threatened the homeworld. No subject species had ever successfully rebelled against imperial rule. The very idea that humans could pose a real threat seemed impossible. How many humans are left alive? He asked. Intelligence estimates suggest perhaps 50 million survivors scattered across the remaining colonies. Most of their major population. Centers were destroyed in our initial attacks 3 years ago. 50 million primitives, the Emperor mused. Against an empire of 4 trillion citizens and the most advanced military in galactic history. The numbers make no sense. But even as he said it, Keth Volume remembered his grandfather's warnings about underestimating seemingly weak enemies. The old Emperor had lived through the Altarian Rebellion, when a small group of freedom fighters had held off Imperial forces for 6 months before finally being crushed out on Earth. In a hidden facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Susan Walsh monitored communications from across the galaxy. As head of humanity's new intelligence division, she had the job of listening to what the Empire's subjects were saying about recent events. What she heard gave her hope for the first time in 3 years. "The word is spreading faster than we expected," she told her assistant, Lieutenant Colonel Dan Murphy. "Species that have been silent for decades are starting to talk about resistance again." Dan looked over the translated messages on her screen. Reports were coming in from systems across the galaxy. The Altarians were talking about independence. The vegan colonies were refusing to pay tribute. Even the peaceful Andromedan traders are asking questions about human weapons technology. "Look at this one," Susan said, pointing to a message from the Tau Ceti system. "The local governor is asking for additional security forces because the population is getting restless. They are calling the humans an inspiration." Dan nodded grimly. The Empire kept control by making everyone believe resistance was impossible. Now we have proved that wrong. Even if we lose, we have shown others that the Empire can be hurt. But they were not planning to lose. In orbital shipyards around Earth and her remaining colonies, humanity was building more ships like the UES Vengeance. Each one incorporated lessons learned from the first vessel, making them even more powerful than their predecessor. The aliens had taught humans about plasma containment and energy shields. Humans had improved on those designs by adding redundant systems and massive power cores. Where an alien ship had 1 reactor, human ships had 3. Where alien weapons fired controlled bursts, Human weapons poured out continuous streams of destruction. How many ships will be ready for the next phase? Dan asked. 12 more vessels should be completed within 2 months, Susan replied. The shipyards are working around the clock. Every human survivor wants to be part of this fight. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, Captain Morrison and his crew aboard the UES Vengeance continued their campaign of terror against Imperial forces. They struck supply convoys, destroyed communication relays, and rescued human prisoners from labor camps. Each victory was broadcast across the galaxy by Amy Carter's sophisticated communications network. The Empire tried to jam the signals, but human technology had evolved beyond their ability to stop it. Every species in the galaxy could watch as their supposedly invincible masters were defeated. Again and again, the psychological impact was enormous. For generations, subject species had been told that the Empire was eternal and all-powerful. Seeing Imperial ships burning in space shattered that illusion completely. On the mining world of Kepler 442b, a group of Altarian workers gathered around a hidden receiver to listen to the latest human broadcasts. The planet's overseer, a cruel Zephyrian named Sub-Commander Ilex, had forbidden any mention of the human uprising, but the workers found ways to get information anyway. The humans destroyed another convoy yesterday, whispered Jakra. Work crew leader. 6 transport ships and their escort vessels. The Empire is starting to move ships away from our sector to hunt for the human raiders. His friend Morka looked around nervously before responding. Do you think it is true? Can the humans really defeat the Empire? Maybe not defeat them completely, Jakra admitted. But they are proving that the Empire is not as strong as they claim. If humans can build ships that destroy Imperial vessels, maybe others can too. Similar conversations were happening on worlds throughout the galaxy. Species that had accepted their fate as permanent slaves were beginning to dream of freedom again. The Empire's intelligence services reported increasing unrest in dozens of systems. Emperor Keth Volume called an emergency meeting of his war council. The assembled generals and admirals filled the great hall, their faces grim as they discussed the growing crisis. The situation is worse than we initially believed, reported Admiral Xantar, commander of the Imperial Navy. The humans are not just attacking randomly. They have a sophisticated intelligence network that tells them exactly where our ships will be. They know our patrol routes, our supply schedules, even our classified communication codes. How is that possible? The Emperor demanded. We believe they have agents throughout the Empire, possibly members of subject species who are feeding them information. The humans are coordinating with resistance cells we did not even know existed. General Morton added his own disturbing news. Several worlds have stopped sending their required tribute. The governors claim it is due to local difficulties, but our intelligence suggests organized resistance. The vegan colonies have declared they will no longer provide food shipments to Imperial forces. Keth Volume felt his empire slipping away piece by piece. The humans had done more than build powerful warships. They had given hope to every oppressed species in the galaxy. Hope was more dangerous than any weapon. What about our own forces? He asked. Are our troops still reliable? The question hung in the air like a poison cloud. For the first time in Imperial history, some Zephyrian commanders were beginning to question whether the Empire could actually win a war. Most remain loyal, Admiral Zenter said carefully. But morale is declining. The crews have seen the recordings of human attacks. They know that our best ships and most experienced commanders have been defeated by primitives who barely understand the technology they are using. On a prison planet in the Rigel system, Lieutenant Colonel Dan Murphy led a rescue mission that would become legendary throughout the galaxy. The camp held over 3,000 human prisoners, survivors from the colony worlds who had been enslaved by the Empire. The guards were not expecting trouble. Why would they? The camp was surrounded by an ocean on a world with no spacecraft. Escape was impossible, but Dan and his team did not come alone. They brought portable teleporters, another piece of alien technology the humans had improved beyond recognition. While the original devices could move small objects short distances, human versions could transport entire squads across continents. The attack lasted less than 20 minutes. Imperial guards, who had spent years tormenting helpless prisoners, found themselves facing soldiers who fought with the desperation of people who had nothing left to lose. The humans did not just win the battle. They obliterated their enemies so completely that the other guards on nearby worlds requested transfers rather than risk facing similar attacks. But the real victory was not military. It was the message Dan left behind for the Empire to find. A simple recording that would be broadcast on every frequency the Empire used. "We are coming for all of our people," Dan said, looking directly into the camera. "Every human you have enslaved, every family you have broken, every child you have stolen. We will find them. We will free them. And we will make you pay for every single crime you have committed against innocent people." The recording ended with images of the freed prisoners boarding human ships, men and women who had given up hope of ever seeing home again, children who had been born in captivity but would now grow up free. Emperor Keth Volume watched the broadcast in his private chambers and realized that his empire was facing something it had never encountered before. Not just rebellion, but revolution. The humans were not trying to carve out a small corner of space for themselves. They were inspiring every oppressed species in the galaxy to rise up at once. For the first time in his life, the Emperor of the Galaxy felt afraid. 6 months after the destruction of Kepler Base, the galaxy had become a very different place. Emperor Keth Volume stood in his war room and stared at a tactical display that showed the collapse of everything his ancestors had built. Red markers indicated systems in open rebellion. Yellow markers showed worlds where Imperial control was slipping. Green markers, representing systems still fully under Empire control, were becoming harder to find with each passing day. "How many ships have we lost this week?" he asked Admiral Zenter. The Admiral consulted his tablet with trembling hands. 17 vessels confirmed destroyed. 23 more are missing and presumed lost. The humans are hitting us faster than we can respond. It was not just one human ship anymore. The HFY Vengeance had been joined by 11 sister ships, each one more advanced than the last. They struck in coordinated attacks that left entire Imperial fleets burning in spaced out, but the ships were only part of the problem. The humans had done something far worse than building superior weapons. They had given every oppressed species in the galaxy a reason to hope. The Altarian system has declared complete independence, General Morton reported. They have seized all Imperial facilities and are demanding the withdrawal of our occupation forces. "What about the vegan colonies?" Keth Volume asked. "Also in rebellion. They have formed some kind of alliance with the humans and are sharing intelligence about our ship movements. Yesterday, they helped the humans destroy a supply convoy bound for the Rigel sector." Keth Volume closed his eyes and tried to understand how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. 3 years ago, the Empire had been unchallenged. Subject species paid their tribute without complaint. Imperial fleets patrolled the galaxy unopposed. No one had even imagined that the natural order could be changed. Now half the galaxy was in flames, and it was all because of one species that should have been extinct. On the bridge of the HFY Vengeance, Captain Morrison reviewed the latest intelligence. Reports from across the galaxy. The human spy network had grown beyond anything he had imagined possible. Resistance cells on hundreds of worlds were feeding information to Amy Carter's communication teams. "The Empire is pulling ships back to defend their core systems," Commander Bennett reported. They are abandoning the outer territories completely. Morrison nodded. It was exactly what they had hoped would happen. By forcing the Empire to concentrate their forces, the humans were giving the subject species room to breathe and organize. Systems that had been under tight Imperial control for centuries were suddenly free to govern themselves. "Any word from Admiral Baker on Earth?" Morrison asked. Amy Carter looked up from her communications station. "The new fleet is ready to launch. 36 ships total, including 6 heavy cruisers. Admiral Baker says they are waiting for your signal to begin the final phase." Morrison felt a mix of excitement and dread. The final phase meant attacking the Empire's core systems directly. It meant taking the war to the Zephyrian homeworld itself. If they succeeded, the Empire would fall. If they failed, humanity would be extinct within days. "Tell Admiral Baker to begin deployment," he ordered. "It is time to end this." On Earth, Admiral Helen Baker stood in the command center that had been built beneath the ruins of Geneva. Around her, dozens of technicians monitored the launch of humanity's first true battle fleet. Each ship represented years of work by engineers who had learned to improve on alien technology in ways their creators never imagined. "All ships report ready for departure," her aide reported. Fleet Admiral Morrison's orders had been received and confirmed. Helen looked at the display, showing the 36 vessels that would carry humanity's hopes to the enemy's doorstep. The ships were beautiful in their own deadly way. Dark hulls that seemed to absorb light. Weapon systems that glowed with barely contained energy. Engines that could push them faster than anything else in space. But more importantly, they carried crews who had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. "Signal the fleet," Helen ordered. "Begin jump sequence. Target, Zephyr Prime." Emperor Keth Volume was meeting with his remaining loyal governors when the alarms began to sound throughout the palace. Emergency lights bathed the throne room in red as palace guards rushed to defensive positions. "Your Majesty," a communications officer burst into the room. "We have multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace throughout the system. The enemy fleet is here." Keth Volume felt his blood turn to ice. The human fleet had somehow crossed 300 light-years of Imperial space without being detected. They had penetrated every defensive line, avoided every patrol, and appeared directly at the heart of the Empire. "How many ships?" he demanded. "Initial count shows 42 vessels. All of them appear to be human design. Sir, they are bigger than anything in our files. Some of these ships are the size of our largest battle cruisers." General Morton activated the room's main display, showing the tactical situation around Zephyr Prime. The human fleet had arranged itself in perfect attack formation, surrounding the planet and its orbital defenses. It was a maneuver that should have taken hours to coordinate, but they had done it in minutes. "Where is our defense fleet?" Volume asked. "Admiral Zenter is moving to intercept with everything we have available. 47 ships total, including the dreadnought Eternal Glory." The Emperor watched as his most powerful vessels moved to engage the human invaders. The Eternal Glory alone was larger than half the human fleet combined. Its shields had never been penetrated. Its weapons could destroy cities from orbit. Surely it would be enough to stop these primitive rebels. The battle began when the two fleets closed to weapons range. The Eternal Glory opened fire first, its massive guns sending streams of energy across space toward the lead human vessel. The shots struck home, causing brilliant flashes of light as they impacted the enemy's shields. But when the light faded, the human ship was still there. Still intact, still advancing. "Impossible," General Morton whispered. "Nothing can withstand a direct hit from the Eternal Glory's main batteries." The human response was swift and overwhelming. Every ship in their fleet opened fire simultaneously, creating a wall of energy that seemed to fill space itself. The Imperial vessels tried to respond, but they were outgunned by weapons they could not understand. One by one, the pride of the Imperial Navy began to die. Ships that had never been defeated in combat were torn apart by human weapons that violated every known law of physics. The Eternal Glory itself took hit after hit until its shields collapsed and its hull began to buckle. "Sir, the Eternal Glory is requesting permission to withdraw," the communications officer reported. "Denied," Keth Volume said desperately. "Order Admiral Zenter to hold his position at all costs." But it was too late. The massive dreadnought exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen from the surface of Zephyr Prime. With it died the last hope of Imperial victory as the human fleet moved into orbit around the planet. Captain Morrison opened a communication channel that reached every screen and speaker on the homeworld. Billions of Zephyrians looked up to see the face of the human who had brought their empire to its knees. "People of Zephyr Prime," Morrison said in their own language, "your emperor told you that humans were primitive animals who deserved to be enslaved or destroyed. Your leaders said we were too weak to matter, too stupid to threaten your superior civilization." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "Look around you now. Look at your burning fleets. Look at your conquered territories. Look at the rebellion spreading through every system you once controlled. This is what happens when you mistake mercy for weakness." The transmission shifted to show images of the destroyed colonies, the murdered families, the children who had died in Imperial attacks. "We offered you peace, and you chose war. We asked for coexistence, and you chose genocide. Now you will live with the consequences of those choices." On his throne, Emperor Keth Volume realized that his empire was finished. The humans had not just defeated his fleets. They had inspired every subject species to rise up at once. The galaxy would never accept Zephyrian rule again. "What do you want?" he asked, speaking directly to the human captain. Morrison's response was simple and final. "We want you to remember that humanity keeps its promises. We promised we would not forgive. We promised we would not forget. And we promised we would make you pay for every innocent life you took." The age of the Zephyrian Empire was over. The age of human ascendancy had begun. And across the galaxy, species that had been slaves for centuries took their first breath of freedom in generations. The primitives had become the masters, and the galaxy would never be the same.